Welcome everyone to another edition of the Classic Comic Archive, a series where I recap and review many of Marvel Comics' most seminal early issues. Our story for today is Uncanny X-Men 8, cover dated November of 1964. This issue marks the first appearance of minor villain, Unus the Untouchable, and was written by Stan Lee, drawn by Jack Kirby, inked by Chick Stone, and lettered by Sam Rosen. Our issue opens up with a striking splash page, showing the X-Men as they're training in the Danger Room. Notably absent is Professor X, as he had some things to take care of, and left in the last issue. In his place, Scott, aka Cyclops, has become interim leader, and is thus supervising his teammates' training. Even though they technically graduated from their academic courses in the last issue, they could still use practice in using their powers. Take the Angel, who carelessly flies right into a spring-up trap. Or take Iceman, who when laughing at the Angel's failure, gets caught off guard and blasted by Scott. But that's not to say that they haven't learned anything under his watch. For example, Iceman's been practicing a way to refine the ice crystals that cover his body. Thus he's finally living up to his name, and no longer looks like a puffy snowman. Marvel Girl's also been honing her skills, as she's now precise enough to telekinetically run a thread through a punch board, in a regular pattern. Looking over her work, Scott commends her for her progress, but what he really wants to say is "I love you." Scott has quite the crush on Jean, but knows that as her new leader, he's got no right to pursue her romantically. Thus while he maintains a rather stoic facade amongst his teammates, he's actually bubbling with inner turmoil. In a rare expression of this angst, Scott grabs a red ball and hurls it at the Beast. Having thought that their training session was over, the Beast's caught off guard and nearly hit. Scott then remarks that their training can never end, at least not while their enemies grow stronger by the day. While the Beast knows that Scott is right, he warns his leader to be careful, as he fears that he's going mad with power. To his credit, Scott admits that he's been working the team too hard, and then gives them all the rest of the day off. So Jean asks him if he'll join them on a trip to the city, but Scott denies the offer, as he's got a lot of work to do at the mansion. With that, the issue shifts forward into the city, where Bobby and Hank, or should I say Iceman and Beast, are enjoying an afternoon stroll. But as they turn a corner, they run into a panicked crowd of onlookers, watching a little boy who's trapped on the top of a high-rise water tower. Obviously Hank's got the power to save the boy, yet Bobby warns him that if he does, he'll expose his identity to the crowd. More concerned for the boy's safety than that of his identity, Hank rips off his oversized shoes and begins climbing the side of the building. As Bobby predicted, the crowd of onlookers quickly realize that he's the mutant Beast, although luckily none of them got a good look at his face. Regardless, Hank quickly grabs a hold of the boy and returns him to his parents. He then drops back down to the street and begins fleeing the scene with Bobby. Yet even though they had just seen him save the life of a little boy, the crowd quickly morphs into a mutant-hating mob, and chase after the two heroes. While Bobby and Hank manage to escape with their identities intact, they return to the mansion exhausted, angry, and in tatters. Thus Hank barges into Scott's office, declares that he's done risking his life for humans, and even claims that Magneto and his evil mutants are right about humanity. Rather shocked by what's been said, Scott tells Hank that he's just tired and upset, and doesn't really mean it. But Hank retorts that he's in full possession of his faculties, and from now on, will only use his powers to help himself. Thus he officially quits the X-Men, and leaves to pack his things. Left feeling a failure, and not sure what to do next, Scott activates Cerebro, a machine that allows him to telepathically contact other mutants, and reaches out to Professor X. Establishing a mental link with his former leader, Scott's gotten a hold of the professor as he's descending a deep cave in the Balkans. It's not clear why he's there, but regardless, Scott explains to the professor his dilemma with Hank. Yet to his surprise, instead of responding with profound wisdom, Professor X simply tells him that there's nothing he can do, but he's at least confident that Hank won't join Magneto's evil mutants. Scott then asks the professor what's going on with his mission, to which the professor reveals that he's on the trail of someone called Lucifer. But he doesn't have time to talk about it, so he wishes Scott farewell, and then breaks mental contact. As Scott's left to decide what to do next, Hank returns to his office and announces that he's leaving. The rest of the X-Men see him off, and one of them asks if he's going to join Magneto's evil mutants. Instead of giving a clear answer, Hank remarks that from now on, what he does, doesn't concern them. With that, the issue shifts forward a week later and to a televised wrestling event. In the ring is the Beast, who's become a top-draw villain, and the reigning champion, Unus the Untouchable. Mind you, while the show's rather theatrical, the actual matches aren't scripted. Thus the Beast actually needs to pin Unus to win. So he first tries rushing his opponent, but without even moving, Unus is somehow able to hurl him away. Recovering from the throw, the Beast then tries to clobber Unus head-on. But again, the wrestler's somehow able to repel the Beast without even touching him. Still thinking he can beat Unus, the Beast then hops onto the ropes and powerfully dives towards him. Yet when he's mere inches away from hitting Unus, he's suddenly flung out of the ring. Crashing into the stands, he's confronted by a group of hecklers, who belittle his skills and urge him to just give up. While their harsh words don't bother him, the Beast's taken off guard when he spots Mastermind, one of Magneto's evil mutants, standing amongst the audience. Thus he realizes that Unus must be a mutant, and Mastermind's there to recruit him into Magneto's Brotherhood. But even so, the Beast has sworn to only use his powers to help himself, and thus decides that Unus joining the Brotherhood isn't his concern. So after the match, which the Beast lost after spending so much time out of the ring, Unus is approached by Mastermind. Yet apparently the two are already acquainted, as Mastermind's not there to recruit Unus into the Brotherhood, but to deliver Magneto's verdict on whether or not he was accepted. Yet Mastermind doesn't give him a clear answer. Instead, he claims that while Magneto's impressed with his power, he wants him to prove his loyalty first. And the only way to do that is to either lead Magneto to the X-Men or defeat one of them in battle. With that, the issue shifts forward some time later, as Unus has changed out of his wrestling attire and is walking down the street. He's thinking about what Mastermind said, and how he's confident that he can defeat not one, but all of the X-Men, if only he could find them. Well, he's in luck, as it's then that he happens to stumble onto an active bank robbery. Like taking candy from a baby, Unus snatches a sack of money from the robbers, and then deflects a volley of bullets from their machine gun. Ricocheting in all directions, the bouncing bullets force the thieves to flee empty-handed. Yet of course this commotion doesn't go unnoticed, as it's spotted by a helicopter hovering overhead. Unbeknownst to Unus, it's actually the X-Men's private helicopter. They've been in the area looking for him, as his mutant brain waves had been picked up by Cerebro. Thus while Cyclops lands the helicopter, the Angel's sent in to see what's going on. Thanks to the fact that he's carrying a huge sack of money, and has changed back into his wrestling outfit, the Angel quickly spots Unus. At first he's not sure what to make of him, but when Unus remarks that he'll soon be one of Magneto's allies, the Angel doesn't waste any time in diving in. But just like the Beast before him, he's effortlessly flung away, and crashes harshly into a brick wall. As he then struggles to recover, the rest of the X-Men arrive on the scene. Cyclops tries to blast Unus, but finds that his beams just bounce right off. So he goes in with some good old-fashioned fists, but finds that they're no better than his beams. Unus then grabs a hold of him, as he can still touch whatever he wants, and mightily hurls him across the street. Cyclops' fall is luckily broken by a telekinetic cushion from Marvel Girl, as Iceman finally jumps into the fray and tries to trap Unus in an unbreakable igloo. He very nearly succeeds in doing so, but Unus is just barely able to shatter it before it freezes to its full strength. It should be noted though, that Unus did that with his innate strength alone, as after spending years becoming a champion wrestler, he's a formidable opponent even without his powers. Regardless, Unus then goes to pounce on the now exhausted Iceman, but gets yanked away by a fully recovered Angel. So he and the Angel begin grappling, but it's obvious that he's got the upper hand, as the Angel can't hit him, and he's caught the hero in an unbreakable headlock. So the Angel then finally makes good use of his powers, as he soars high into the sky, with Unus still holding on. Yet while Unus knows that he can't hold on forever, he also knows that the Angel's too noble to let him fall to his death. And he's right, as instead of dropping him, the Angel just leaves him stranded on the top of a tall building. He then regroups with his teammates, who all decide that the best course of action is to return to the mansion, and come up with a plan. So that's exactly what they do, but when they get there, they notice that someone's broken into the lab. Heading inside, they discover that Hank, wearing his X-Men costume, is there tinkering with a special device, one that he claims can defeat Unus. But when they ask how it works, Hank reveals that it'll actually increase Unus's power. Taking this to mean that he's betrayed them and joined Magneto, Scott immediately tries to destroy the device. Shielding it from harm, Hank tells Scott that what he's going to do is for their own good. But Scott won't listen to him, so Hank just grabs the device and jumps out of the window. His former teammates go after him, and rightly deduce that he's heading to Unus's wrestling gym. So let's shift focus to the gym, where Unus is on the phone begging Mastermind for another chance to prove himself to Magneto. That's when the Beast barges in, and shoots Unus with an energy beam from his device. For a moment, Unus shrugs it off like nothing even happened. But then he realizes that he's become stronger, and assumes that the Beast's betrayed his former team, and is working on behalf of Magneto. Thus when the X-Men arrive on the scene, the Beast convinces Unus to spare them, and instead let him deal with them himself. So as the Beast and his former teammates confusedly leave the gym, Unus takes the opportunity to experiment with his newfound power. He discovers that he can not only repel things even farther, but he can also send them spinning just by getting near them. To celebrate, Unus decides to light up a smoke. But as he goes to grab a cigarette, he finds that he can't get a hold of it. It's as if his power is now so great, he's unable to touch anything. Heading outside, Unus tries to order himself a steak. But as one might imagine, he can't get near it without it accidentally flying away. But back to the X-Men, who've brought the Beast to the mansion. Yet they haven't bothered restraining him, as even though they think he's a traitor, they also know that he alone can't defeat them, and nor has he tried. So they're back to Plan A, which is now to trap Unus in a plastic bubble. I'm not sure where it came from, or how they're gonna get him inside of it, but once he is, he won't be able to touch it. Thus he'll move with it, and it'll act as a portable prison. But as Cyclops is explaining all of this to their prisoner the Beast, a phone call comes in from Iceman, who was left behind to monitor Unus. He simply gives them an address to come to, so without asking questions, the rest of the X-Men, and the Beast, hop into their private helicopter and fly back to the city. Heading to the address that Iceman gave them, the X-Men find Unus in a diner, struggling to grab a hold of just one thing to eat. So the Beast steps in with his device, and tells Unus that he can reverse the effects of the first beam, but only if he swears to remain out of trouble, and never contact Magneto again. Since the alternative is starving to death, Unus agrees to the terms. Thus the Beast blasts him once more, and he walks off to go back to wrestling. The issue subsequently ends as the X-Men realize that the Beast had never actually betrayed them, and thus readily accept his request to join back. That concludes Uncanny X-Men 8, and another episode of the Classic Comic Archive. But as always, I would like to offer a brief review of this issue. Overall, I thought that this was a solid story, and a nice break from the usual X-Men formula. While the issue certainly involved Magneto and his Brotherhood, it was the first since issue 3, to not have the X-Men outright fight them. That's something I definitely appreciated, as having the same villain for 4 straight issues was getting rather tiring. As for Unus himself, I thought that he was a simple, but surprisingly fun villain. He's obviously not that deep of a character, but he definitely had a cool power set, and I'm hoping that we see more of him soon. But in any case, let me know what you thought of this issue and the video, and feel free to suggest other classic comics for me to cover. Thanks for watching.